they say on average, if you're going the friendship first route, it takes about 1.5 to 2 years for this thing to evolve. And to be fair, again, I have seen this in my personal life. I've seen this where I've had friends who were friends, legitimately just not trying to date each other, just straight up talking to each other for 2, 3, 4 years before it suddenly became romantic, right? And so you got to look at that. You got to look at, one, is the pacing of the friendship to romance situation one that you want to do? And so you got to ask yourself, is that something that you're going to be able to do? If you're talking to a woman that you can see as a relationship, can you withstand not being in a relationship with her for 2, 3, 4 years before you actually get into a situation? Now, with that said, I did write up some other things you need to consider that you need to ask yourself when looking at this kind of situation. Because again, they're now saying that it is a viable route, but you have to really, really look at the following 5 things, right? The first question you have to ask in terms of the friendship to relationship pipeline is, number 1, did either person go into the friendship hoping it would turn into more? Most guys, let's be real, guys, most of us, if we have female friends, we got with that female friend with the intent of, I'm going to be able to eventually show her why I'm such a great guy, and I'm going to be able to turn this into something, right? So you have to consider with this survey, how many guys or how many women were not actually opening up that they really wanted, that they found the person attractive, or that, yeah, they're doing friends with benefits and they're calling it a friendship, but one of the other person's hooking up, hoping that those hookups are going to make the other person feel like they want a relationship. You have to ask yourself that. Number 2, did these friendships include a benefit situation? I.e., did these friendships include hookups? Because you could have 2 people that are completely like doing nothing together and we're just like, buddy, pal, pal, until romantic things started happening, and then they decided to date, and then they hooked up. But more often, it's going to be a situation where they're friends, they're bored one night, they get drunk, one went through a breakup and wants to help the other one heal, and in the process, they hook up, and then they're like, oh crap, like, we didn't know that was going to happen. What does this mean for the friendship? You know what? Let's just keep it a friendship for now because it's less messy. And so those are technically still friendships, but there's a lot of things going on in the background that's leading it towards this. So you got to ask yourself that. Third thing you got to ask is, who is showing the first signs or initiating the first moves towards romance in these situations? And this is going to speak to some of the messages I'm going to answer a little bit later, but suffice to say, what this survey really doesn't do a good job of is explaining in these situations who's showing the first signal. Now, I will say, again, I coach you guys based on things that I've experienced and that I've helped other people's coach through, and just things I've seen in my life with my friends and guy friends that I know and stuff, right? I have found more often than not, from my observation, in situations where it went from friendship to relationship, I'd say like 97% of the time, the woman initiated. Like I've had a minor amount of situations where I was able to eventually hook up with a friend of some kind, and that resulted from, they started showing some signals that were glaringly obvious that it was cool for a hookup. Okay. I've seen it in situations where, again, I had guy friends that were friends with the women they're now with for 2, 3, 4 years. And what happened? The woman eventually started showing a bit more interest. They were around a bit more. They were asking to see them a lot more. They were starting to touch them a lot more. And the guy had to have the wherewithal to be like, oh crap, I think stuff's happening. I can react. Rarely have I seen it where 2 people are friends, a man and a woman, and then the guy starts trying to overtly go after the female friend and it worked out. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying I have yet to see that. So what does this speak to? This speaks to the idea that ultimately you as the guy trying to chase a woman or convince her to go from a friend to a relationship is not going to matter if she doesn't have the same feelings. But as you can see, if the woman has the feelings, she will make it overtly obvious that she's ready to go to those steps, at which point all you got to do is recognize the signals and then hop in there. Now, the problem is, which I'll go into a little bit later, is that sometimes men misread what's going on and then they don't know if it's time for them to make that move, which is why I always say you look for the woman to make the moves. I go about some of those, go into some of those moves extensively in the Introvert Dating Success Academy, which you can check out at the website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. But suffice to say, if a woman doesn't look like she's making any of these particular moves, then you trying to think, well, we've hung out for a year and a half. I guess it's time to try to make this a relationship. More often than not, from my observation, you're going to fail. The fourth question you got to ask yourself is, what things did the initiator see in regards to the other person that made them develop feelings? So what I mean by that is this, right? A woman comes to you and says, or a woman comes to you, she's got a boyfriend, and she says, yeah, me and him, we were friends for like a year and a half or 2 years, and then we just started dating. And she's like, I don't know how it happened, because honestly, most women aren't really paying attention to how they get into relationships. They just know they start feeling a thing, and then they just go with their feelings, right? But as the guy, if you start observing and start really asking questions, you may start to realize that for women, the reason they start developing feelings is because the guy was doing all the right things in terms of not trying to chase after her, in terms of, okay, if this is a friendship, I'm not going to try to push her to make this a thing. So I'm going to go and talk to other women because this is just my friend. And for all we know, that woman started realizing that, oh, some of his time is now devoted to going out without her and to seeing other people and not always calling her up and texting her all the time. And now she's like starting to realize that that's bugging her. Why is that bugging me? Why is it when he tells me about the new girl that he went out with that I suddenly feel this pain in my chest and I go home and cry about it? Maybe it's because I'm starting to realize that this friendship that I have is actually a budding romance or a budding thing of feelings for me that I wasn't aware was there until he started like doing romantic things with other people. And to a guy, that may not make sense. Like, wait, so when I was free and available and we were friends and she could see me anytime she wanted to, she wasn't trying to go after me like that. And at the point that I start talking about I have other girls that I'm seeing, or I joined a dating app, or I had a good time with Susie over here on a date, all of a sudden now she's starting to show signals. Yes, because as I've said on the show before, women like men that other women like. And because other women are going to be proof of concept. Other women are going to validate that you are, in fact, a good guy to date. And so sometimes a woman might be friends with you, but if you're not trying to push the agenda of it being a relationship and you're just living your life like, hey, she's a friend, I got friends over here, and I got girls that I'm dating, then that female friend of yours might be like, oh, snap, I'm going to actually start to lose some of his attention. I'm going to lose some of his time. I'm going to lose some of the effort he's spending when he spends with me. Like, but do I really want that? And so these kind of surveys, they don't give away that part. They don't give away the part that when a guy's just living his life and not trying to press things, that sometimes the woman in the situation will start to think, oh my God, I really like him. Now, most guys, honestly, after like 2 or 3 months of good friendship, good conversation, if you are in a friends with benefits situation, most of us are like, I could get with this girl. Like, we're already hanging out. We already get along great. We talk about everything and the hookups are great. What more evidence do I need? But sometimes women need a little bit longer, like 21.9 months, and they need to also be able to see that other women actually want you, i.e. other women qualify you to be a good candidate to date before they themselves jump on the I want to date him train. Again, I've experienced that. I've seen my friends experience that. And so you have to consider that if these are situations where guys are trying to initiate all these relationships, the majority of the time, it's not going to happen. The guy's job is to make sure that he's catching the signals that she's throwing so then he knows to initiate a first date conversation. But you're still looking at, but the woman's got to throw those signals first. If she's not throwing those kind of signals, then you are wasting effort. And then the fifth question you got to ask is, how does hindsight affect people's memories of events that took place and or feelings in their friendship prior to romance? It's very easy in a hindsight situation to say, yeah, back then we were just friends, but blah, blah, blah. But if people were honest, there was probably a tingling of when I first saw that guy, oh, I thought he was kind of cute, but I wasn't in a place yet to date, so he was cute, blah, blah, blah. But just the fact that she said, oh, that guy was cute, there was already a subconscious leveling of, and I could get with that guy. At the very least, I could hook up with that guy. And for guys, let's face it, if we see any kind of pretty girl, more often than not, we're not trying to start a friendship. Like, most of you guys probably have enough female friends in your arsenal to where, and most of them were probably, you were trying to get with them, something messed up, and then it didn't happen, right? So you got to look at, this girl comes along and you're trying to say, but I really just want to be friends with this cute, hot, attractive girl that has curves and smells nice and likes to talk about the things I like Star Wars and stuff. Like, no, I just want to be friends with her. More often than not, that's probably not where you're coming from. But again, in hindsight, you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't try to get with her, just friends. And hey, it could very well be you were just trying to be friends, which again, actually only helps you. Because if you're friends with her and you're not actively in the moment trying to get with her, but you see that something could be there, you keep her around, and then she starts showing those signals, then you can decide at that point, okay, she's showing signals. Do I want to risk like this friendship thing for a potential long-term thing, that could be a thing, you know? So all this to say, in terms of the actual study we went over, that yes, friendship to romance can happen. It is a viable way for people to get together, but you got to look at the particulars of how this actually works. And I'm going to go into some of the messages that I got whereby people are having questions about how they do this. And I'm going to show you how it is that guys go wrong when they're trying to implement the friendship to romance strategy. I will say this: if you're purposely going to a friendship with the intent of trying to eventually make this a romance, more often than not, you're going to fail. And I'm going to go into the messages that explain that. But hopefully for now, I thought that study was very interesting. And again, it was an eye-opener for me. Hey, like I said, guys, I'm always a student of the game. And even when I think I'm right, I'm like, but I'll be open to hearing new information. So going forward, that doesn't mean that I'll be saying like, hey, friends to romance, do this. I'm going to say that you need to be mindful that is the way it can happen. But I don't want you guys to get too hyped up about, yes, I can be friends with the girl, because just being that hyped up about it and thinking you can now do things to make that happen is going to be to your downfall. And I don't want you to have that happen to you. So I'd still err on the side of, you need to, when you're meeting women for the first time that you want to ideally date, you should be taking it down that pathway. You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high class man. You a high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man.